Hello and welcome to The Edit by Engage Creative. I am Sophie.
And I'm Amy, and we are the co-founders of Engage Creative, a marketing agency specifically for wedding businesses. And today you are going to pick my brain about meta ads for Facebook and Instagram.
Yes. So meta ads are so incredible for businesses, and it isn't my area of specialty, but it is yours, and you are a wealth of knowledge when we start playing around with ads. So I definitely wanted to kind of structure this as some really great questions that we get asked all the time. So I kind of will just hit you.
Hit me with the questions. I'm excited.
So what would you say is the difference between a boosted ad versus like a paid ads campaign?
So boosted, I think a lot of clients that come to us have had experimented and played around with boosted posts, and that is the in-app ability. We can do it in-app or desktop of boosting an organic piece of content. So there's I think it's like 4 steps, and you pick a budget, an audience, you obviously pick the piece of content that you're wanting to boost, and then that kind of amplifies the reach of that organic. And that's good kind of basic marketing, but it can kind of be quite costly, and it's good, in my opinion, if you've got a piece of organic content that is performing really well and you want to amplify that. But if you are looking at your marketing as like a long-term strategy, I definitely consider like a more substantial paid ads campaign. And that is something that gets set up and organized and managed through Meta Business Suite. And I'm not a fan of Meta Business Suite, but it all gets set up in there. There's more structure to it, and there's also more options in terms of targeting of audience, of the placement that you can put your ads on, and then also the creative and how that's structured. So a lot of business owners, meta ads aren't their forte, so they shy away from it. But I think in this day and age, organic only gets you so far. So if you have the ability to put a budget behind paid ads, I think a hybrid approach of having that consistent paid ads campaign strategy and then boosting well-performing organic posts is what I think works best for wedding businesses.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think that also we must say is that when you boost a post, you actually get charged a surcharge doing that versus…
You don't on desktop.
Yes,
but if you do it on the app on your phone, Apple now has a sneaky little service fee.
So that's a little sneaky kind of insight.
Yeah, insider tip.
If you were wanting to do it on your phone. Do you think that wedding vendors still need to do Facebook ads in general?
Yeah, Facebook, a lot of people think that Facebook is a little bit of an irrelevant platform now. It's suited to an older audience, and that they kind of just post the same content that they create for Instagram over to Facebook as an easy kind of option. In terms of paid ads, I think it is still really important because unlike, say, Instagram and TikTok, Facebook, like you have a profile on Facebook. And what do people that get engaged do? They change their relationship status on Facebook from in a relationship to engaged. Now, you can actually pull that data and utilize that piece of information to target audiences that have changed their status from to engaged in the last 3 months, in the last 6 months, and in the last year. And I think as wedding businesses, that's really important. But that is specific to the Facebook platform, which is why I recommend there's some businesses that we do Instagram only, but I think especially in the early stages, it's really important to capitalize on the fact that that information is available for you from like an audience targeting perspective.
How do you create a meta ads strategy? I think that's like such a big loaded question, but how would you look at setting up a strategy for a wedding-based business on Meta?
So creating a meta ad strategy, it starts off with your marketing objective. And for most wedding businesses, what I have found, it's a brand awareness piece, so getting more visibility on the platform, or it's driving traffic to your website. I don't think it really works, or like you should have the mindset of a traditional brand that's doing ads where you're going to get an instant return on investment in terms of a purchase or an inquiry. You got to think of the nature of how engaged couples are going through this customer journey. They're getting inspiration, they're getting engaged, and then they're doing their research and they're considering. And it can be anywhere from a couple of months to a couple of years before they make decisions on vendors for numerous reasons. So it's not really about like a straight conversion in terms of I want an inquiry or I want a booking, because that's a very hard like thing to trace, but it's about driving people to the website so they hopefully invest time and want to explore your brand more and ideally inquire with your business. So that is really important in terms of like the beginning part of like a strategy. And then there are things that you want to look for. And the next thing that I always consider is budget. What budget do you have to work with on a monthly basis? And budget comes down to a few things, considering how big of an audience you want to reach. So for some businesses, they are geographically restricted. So wedding venues are a great example. You are only ideally going to get bookings from a certain geographical region around your venue. Therefore, your budget doesn't have to be as big as, say, a bridal designer who has stockists all over Australia or all over the world that wants to target certain capital cities and obviously will need a larger budget because the audience size by default ends up being a lot bigger. So that's something to consider in terms of your budget. The next thing is then obviously all of the audience selections. So that goes from demographics in terms of age, gender, location, and then things like their interests and their behaviors. And there is a whole world of things that you can choose from. A lot of the time you're able to kind of decide, but explore those because, as I said, you can pick people that are newly engaged. You can pick people that are in a certain like area of work that they do or profession. If they're business owners. Another one which I thought was quite interesting, which is a bit of a tangent audience objective, especially in this climate, is people that have dining out as an interest, because that kind of leads to the fact that they have probably a higher disposable income. So they are, exploring that activity. And also people that travel frequently. That is also another indicator of a high disposable income, so something that you can also capitalize. So start thinking about a bit out of the box and exploring what those interests and behaviors are and obviously tailoring them and considering them. So that's another thing to consider. And then lastly, when it comes to like the strategy as a whole, is the actual content. So what you are creating your ads from. And there are a few things that you can consider creating ads from. One is looking at your organic content and what has performed well, and then utilizing that as an ad, whether you boost that post or you actually take that piece of content and format it into an ad. Then there is just random pieces of content that you think could potentially work well, or it's a piece of content that you really like. That's something that, again, it's all about playing out. So when you create your paid ads campaign, it isn't about just putting in one ad. You can put 20 ads if you want. I would say anywhere from 6 to 9 are a good testing ground, and you will be surprised. Sometimes a piece of content that you don't think will perform very well is the best performing piece, so you don't want to discount it. So especially if you're starting out, experiment a little bit. Play around as well with if you want it to be a single image, if you want it to be an image carousel, if you want it to be a video carousel or a single video. Playing and having a bit of variety of your ad content, again, is really important. And I think the key thing about all of this strategy, especially if you are starting out, is think of it as a testing ground. So experiment with the type of content, experiment with the placement, experiment with the copy. And Meta has it set up now that you can do copy variations and then you can filter it and see which ones have performed better. So in the first 3 to 6 months, you will be wanting to look at your data and what is and isn't working. And their metrics and their kind of analytics are very comprehensive and you can get quite granular with certain things. But use all of that information and kind of use it. Consider the first 3 to 6 months as figuring out what is and isn't working. And then obviously what I love to do is double down on what is working, add in a few more elements and continue to optimize and refine your strategy.
Well, do you have some key tips about setting up your Meta ads?
Well, the first thing is you have to get the setup right. And that's really tricky because they've evolved it over time and it is a little bit clunky and a little bit annoying to figure out because it's a little bit different for everyone. But setting up a proper business profile and then having your Facebook page under it and then your Facebook ad account, or like your Meta ad account underneath it, is just makes it all nice and clean. And you can obviously, you as the owner can have access to it, but then if you work with an agency or work with someone external, you can give them access and it's all neat and clean. That's the first thing. The second thing is I like to personally do campaigns in quarterly blocks. You can obviously have a campaign that is ongoing, but I think quarterly blocks are a good middle ground in terms of having those pieces of content outline and visible to people over, say, the 12-week period without it getting too stale or boring. It also is a good time block in terms of then, okay, cool, I'm then going to assess and look at my metrics and what has and hasn't worked, and then use that information to inform my next block of ads. You don't want to leave it too long. So I feel like that 3-month block is kind of like a good, and also I feel like that's also very achievable for a lot of businesses to go, cool, yeah, I'm going to every 4 times a year going to invest in some time to set up my ads and have them running and looking at the data. So that's another thing. One thing which is a relatively new area of Meta, which I don't think a lot of people are aware about, is how it is implementing AI into its setup. And a lot of it is by default. So you have to be aware of it and then decide to turn it off or on. But more often than not, all of those AI kind of features are turned on. They're called like enhancements or advantage plus. And you have to turn them off, but you have to be aware of them in the first place. So they're in kind of 2 key areas. The first is in the audience. So there's actually, it's really interesting. There's a little tick box and it says like if you can put in your parameters for your audience in terms of your age, your location, your gender, your metrics, but it will have a little tick box already ticked that said AI can find more followers for you, but it will be outside of the scope that you've set. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't know to turn that off, you will be spending money on reaching an audience that is outside what you've already defined, because AI is like, well, AI is thinking to itself, well, I'm doing a good job because I'm reaching more people. But the trade-off is that actually like the right people? So that's something to keep in mind. And the second thing is when it comes to your actual creative, there are a lot of enhancements now around the image, and you can extend the image, it can color brighten, it can do all of these things to kind of enhance the visual look of your content. So you can decide whether you want to have those elements on or off. I personally prefer to have them off. But one of the big things is they now automatically put music to your ads. But the music is very
not
random.
on brand.
Well, that's the thing. You can obviously go in and flick through the music and choose which one. But if you don't do that, it would pick very random music. I've heard everything from instrumental holiday vibes to death metal. But again, if you don't know that that is something that you have to choose to turn off or choose to select, then yeah. But I have seen ads where I'm like, oh, okay, that has music on it. And I've actually sent people DMs to be like, did you know this? Yeah. Maybe you should go and turn that off. So again, it's about knowing, which I guess that's the hard thing for business owners is
it's
doing
another
paid
thing to
ads
do. Yeah.
in itself is an exercise, but staying on top of the changes is another thing. And I mean, we can dive into it. I mean, we talked about AI in a previous episode, but there's a whole meta thing that Mark Zuckerberg is going to revolutionize the paid ads, and it's going to be very AI driven. So that's something to obviously keep a lookout for and be mindful of. But I think there are opportunities to do it if it's of interest to you, but if it isn't, find someone like ourselves,
like you,
like me, that can implement that within your marketing strategy and your business if that is something that you feel is going to amplify and meet an objective for you for your business.
And Amy has put a lot of time and consideration into our masterclass, which is an easy downloadable link on our website. So if you are wanting to learn, have a little bit more knowledge of Amy's brain on Meta ads,
We'll
that's
also
really
walk you
great.
through how to set up a campaign. So you can
Exactly.
literally be watching that and
Be doing it.
at the same time.
Yeah.
Which I think for me is like how my brain works. I find those kind of very visual learnings and like being able to stop, start and go back very helpful.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing your wealth of knowledge.
My pleasure. I hope
were
it wasn't too much, but
No,
I don't think it should be a scary topic for people. I think people, as I said,
It's an
organic will
incredible
get
thing to consider.
and organic will get you so far. But I really think in this day and age, you need to be amplifying. And if I had a limited budget or spend, but I was able to put some money behind something, it would be like ads on Instagram for sure.
Yeah.
Like a paid ads campaign.
Cool. Thank you, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks, guys.